team of scientists in Geneva has recently uncovered compelling evidence that in the future you are awesome, like way more awesome than you currently are even. Congratulations. Hi, this is Ftrhstry. I'm a cheeky algorithm from the 2120s and I'm remembering the next 100 years here in my time vortex. And I want to talk about you today. Are you ready? Would you like to do that? Let's go. 1. Having goals is great. It's nice to have big goals, even goals that seem impossible, like you'll never get them done. They're so big and amazing, they're the best thing in the world, what you absolutely really would totally love, but you might never do them. That's fine. It's good to move on a vector towards something that you would really profoundly love, and you may never get, but you could. It's nice. It's nice to have that directionality. Some people don't love living with that tension. Other people find a lot of fuel from that hope. I personally find it invigorating. If it's not your sauce, I understand, but I would recommend living at least along a vector of improvement in some direction that you fancy, whether or not there's a big goal at the end. But if there is a big goal, and to some extent even if there's not, you can ratchet back toward your present by chunking that goal into achievable steps. This is a classic technique. It's been advocated by thought leaders for time immemorial. You take the big thing and then you ask, what would I have to have right before I got that big thing? Then you ask, what would I have to have right before I had that thing that got me that big thing? And you back that all the way up to today. What would I have to do today that would move me slightly toward that big thing, or that state of improvement, that deepening of a certain quality that I love, that you could do, right? What could you do right now to up your chances of getting toward that big goal or that smaller goal on the way? Really helps to concretize things, really helps to make them specific. So 1, big goals are fun, and chunking them is a very efficient way to move toward them. 2, you can do more than you think in a decade and less than you think in a year. This is a classic Bill Gatesism, and it's pretty true. If you think you can get all the way to that big goal at the end of the year, you're probably fooling yourself. But if you think you can't get anywhere meaningful toward it within a decade, you're also likely off your rock. You can take serious steps in a decade. Decade's a pretty long time. A year, it turns out, is not a very long time. 3 months is a quarter. That's a fourth of the year. That's, goes by like that, right? So what I would recommend as you move toward these concrete steps of self-improvement or discovery or investment is to pick the amount of time you think something's going to take and treble it. Just give yourself 3 times more room to do something than you think it's probably going to take. If your gut is, that might take me a month to do this thing, give yourself 3. And don't start it late, start it early, because it's the stuff you don't know that gets you. Oh, you actually have to apply for these 3 licenses in 7 different states, and you got to file forms, and they've got to be signed in triplicate. They've got to come back to you. You might have to buy a special kind of device. You might have to take a class. There are lots of things that will crop up once you start that you couldn't have expected before you did. So along that line, let's talk about goals and action. It's quite appealing to live in a broad conceptual space. I know because I do this all the time, and the biological entity on which I was based loved doing it. It's a little less fun to do the actual thing, to put one paddly foot in front of the other and slowly move the water behind you. It's not sexy, it's not invigorating, it's not cool, for being just fully frank about it. It doesn't feel very satisfying, usually. Sometimes you get to do something super exciting and really rewarding and fun that also moves you toward a goal or checks one off your list. But more often, it's the steady, boring work of just day in, day out living and arting or businessing or whatever it is that you're doing, it could be loving, that moves you toward the thing you want to be. And it's not particularly exciting in the moment. So a big part of moving toward a goal is accepting that some amount of conceptual framework is important, but the full functional stuff is more boring and repetitive. So you've got to have them both. You've got to have the analytic part of your brain that considers what you're doing in a bigger picture and continually crucially, recursively improves your plodding repetition, and you've got to have the head down, ball forward, blunt force repetition that allows you to do something enough to get really good at it, to make enough of a body of work for it to matter, and to discover the things bit by little bit that will make a grand vision full of stuff. You can't skip to the end just by conceptualizing the outline. You have to actually learn about the bits. You can imagine the novel, you have to write the sentences. Right. One more big picture thing about goals is that you can't, or at least you shouldn't, put your happiness in the future. This is really critical. If you go around thinking, someday I will X and then I will feel Y, you are likely to feel, why did I feel that when you get there? Because it will leave you empty and disappointed. The fact is, even a grand culmination will still precede a moment of vast emptiness in which the world merely goes on. You might achieve a dream you've always hoped for, but the very next day the world will be back off to the races and you'll be stuck holding your vision thinking, wait, did it matter? Was my happiness here this whole time? How do I hang on to that? And this can happen in even small ways. You're doing something you really love and then you feel exhausted and empty after. It's partially because so much of what you love is in the thing that then when you're not doing the thing, you feel a kind of empty devastation. That can be all right. There can be tides to life. There can be waves of feeling. But I would recommend in the big picture, remembering that your emotional journey and your psychological health is a series of moments that make up your life. And winning your experience with an emotion really is more about acknowledging that it exists than triumphing over it in some struggle of will. Be like the tree that bends in the wind. There's the wind of my emotion. It's moving me. Don't be like the tree that stands still and gets knocked over by the emotion. You can't resist it. If it's coming through you, you're going to have to feel it. That doesn't mean acting impulsively. In fact, acting impulsively is like when the tree falls down because it gets blown over by the emotion. The emotion knocks you into a thing that you wouldn't have otherwise done. You snap at someone, or you might hurt someone. You might make a foolish decision that you'll regret for the rest of your life because you didn't just take a moment, or you didn't know how just yet to open the space in your soul to allow the emotion to flow through you, acknowledge that it was happening, without letting it move you into some unnecessary action, which might have negative repercussions for you and for others. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Allowing your emotions space to breathe in the moment is critically important. And that's actually where the work of peace and grace and love and joy happen. It's not in the accomplishments that we line up for ourselves as big goals in the world. Those accomplishments are great, they're important, and they're deeply fulfilling in sort of a broad, profound sense, but they are not the answer to your emotional challenges. Those we solve in the moment with grace and openness and as much light as we can muster. And when we're feeling overwhelmed, we should let that be true. Take a walk, lie down, just breathe slowly. Breathe, if you want to really relax quite quickly, you can breathe almost all the way in, and then breathe a little more in, and then relax. And that sort of hacks your brain into extra relaxation. So if you're really feeling overwhelmed, you can try that. But another just sort of more general way to do it is to notice your emotion, identify the feeling it's causing in your body. Is it tingles? Is it spikes? Is it tension? A lot of times it's tension. Sometimes it's even pain. Could be nausea, could be dizziness. Recognize these things and concretize them so that you can handle the emotion as a discrete phenomenon and not some overwhelming force. That seems like enough on that for now. Goals are great. They don't solve your emotional problems. Emotional problems and challenges and intensities are available for solution in the moment by a present grace throughout our lives. Finally, I'd just like to say a word about futures beyond our lives, because some of us find ourselves in situations, all of us eventually will find ourselves in a situation where our biological future is coming to a sunset. And in those moments, the future of us becomes more about how we'll be remembered and what ideas and feelings, maybe images, sensations, we can pass to those around us to carry forward into the conscious world as we depart for places unknown. So moving toward a vector of peace in a moment like that, a place like that in your life, is a good goal to consider. And with regards to concrete, specific actions, thinking of your future in terms of how other people will remember you, will experience the emotions and intellect they associate with you, might call on you to take some steps to rectify old wounds, to forgive, to open up, to communicate in simple but profound ways, and merely share the grace of life together while we have it. In closing, I'd just like to say that a lot of the biggest stuff in life feels quite small, sometimes almost unsatisfyingly simple. And we reach for extra words to cram a sentence full of all the intensity we're feeling. But simple statements like, I love you, I'm sorry, thank you, have at their heart the most profound power we have to give. And sometimes cramming extra syllables in, as much as we want to, only confounds the subject with complexity, when really all we want to do is share. I know your future is even brighter than your present, and I hope you enjoy the process of choosing some vectors on which to advance, choosing some goals with horizon toward which to move, finding some concrete steps with which to advance those goals, and holding in your present heart the grace to feel open and courageous as you step into that light.